Here's the truth most gardeners never expect to learn the hard way. One simple change to my garden walkways transformed the entire soil ecosystem and, well, the first sign was worms everywhere. Before I explain how and why this worked, make sure you subscribe to the Evergreen Garden channel and drop a comment with your own soil struggles or wins, because this kind of practical long-term knowledge is exactly what we build together here. I covered my garden walkways with organic mulch, and within weeks worms began flooding not just the paths but the beds themselves. This wasn't luck and it wasn't magic, it was soil biology responding to the right conditions. Most gardeners focus only on planting areas and ignore walkways, but walkways are often the largest exposed soil surface in a garden. When left bare, compacted or baked by the sun, they actively damage soil life. When treated correctly, they become worm factories that feed the entire garden. But why covering walkways changes everything underground? Bare soil is, frankly, hostile to worms. It dries out quickly, overheats during the day, and compacts under foot traffic. Worms need moisture, stable temperatures, and organic matter to survive. When you cover walkways with the right materials, you create a protected, cool, moist layer that worms move into almost immediately. Once established, they don't stay confined to the paths. They migrate into nearby beds, pulling nutrients and improving structure across the whole garden. What I used and why it worked so fast. The most effective material I've used is untreated wood chips layered over cardboard. The cardboard acts as an initial weed barrier and moisture sponge, while the wood chips provide long-term food and insulation. For best results, the cardboard should be plain brown with no glossy ink or tape, laid with overlapping edges by at least 4 inches so weeds cannot find gaps. On top of that, I applied wood chips at a depth of 8 to 10 centimeters. Anything thinner dries out too fast, and anything much thicker can slow oxygen movement initially. Within about 2 weeks, lifting a corner revealed worms feeding beneath the cardboard. By the second month, castings were visible throughout the walkway edges, and soil that had once been hard and grey turned dark and crumbly. Here's the thing. Worms in walkways improve your beds without any extra work. Worms don't really respect garden boundaries, you know. Their tunnels act as highways that move air, water, and nutrients into planting areas. Every time it rains or you irrigate, water follows these channels deep into the soil profile instead of just running off. Worm castings, which are richer in plant-available nutrients than raw compost, spread naturally as worms travel. So this means better root growth, stronger plants, and less need for fertilizers. In my garden, beds next to mulched walkways required about 20% less watering by the end of the season. Tomatoes developed deeper roots, leafy greens stayed tender longer, and soil compaction dropped dramatically without mechanical tilling. The moisture balance that keeps worms multiplying is, well, pretty crucial. Worms really thrive when soil moisture stays consistent, not soggy and not dry. Covered walkways actually act like sponges. After watering or rainfall, they absorb excess moisture and release it slowly over time. This stability allows worm populations to grow instead of crashing during those hot spells. In practical terms, if your soil holds together when squeezed but breaks apart when poked, you're in the ideal moisture range. During dry seasons, I like to lightly water the walkways first before irrigating the beds. This encourages worms to remain active near the surface and continue processing organic matter instead of retreating deep underground. Let's talk about how carbon-rich materials attract worms without creating nitrogen problems. A common fear is that wood chips might rob nitrogen from your plants. But this only happens when carbon materials are mixed directly into the soil. When used as surface mulch on walkways, decomposition happens slowly at the interface, and nitrogen drawdown stays pretty localized. Worms actually accelerate this process by digesting fungi and bacteria that colonize the chips, converting locked-up nutrients into usable forms. For faster results, you can lightly sprinkle nitrogen-rich material, such as diluted compost tea or aged manure tea, at a ratio of 1 part compost to 5 parts water over the walkway once a month. This kind of jumpstarts microbial activity without feeding weeds. Timing matters more than most people realize. Covering walkways works best when done before extreme heat or heavy rains. Early spring and early fall are ideal because soil life is already active and temperatures are moderate. That said, even mid-season applications will show results if moisture is maintained. The key is consistency. Once covered, do not remove the mulch unless you are adding more. After one full growing season, the original cardboard will be mostly gone, replaced by a living soil layer rich in fungi and worm channels. At that point, simply top up wood chips annually at a depth of 5 centimeters to keep the system running. So let's talk about some common mistakes that might stop worms from showing up. Using dyed or treated wood chips, for example, really slows decomposition and actually repels soil organisms. If your mulch layer is too thin, it just dries out far too quickly. Also, if you let your walkways get compacted before you cover them, it makes it much harder for worms to get in. And if your soil is really compacted, watering deeply before you lay down cardboard helps soften things up and invites that initial colonization. You'll want to avoid using plastic or landscape fabric. These materials block oxygen and trap heat, which creates anaerobic conditions that worms just won't tolerate. Here's why this approach is sustainable and, well, truly evergreen. This method actually builds your soil year after year instead of depleting it. Your walkways stop being dead zones and become active parts of your garden ecosystem. The more you walk on them, the more the surface stays protected, while all the biology underneath gets on with the real work. Over time, you'll notice fewer weeds, easier digging, better yields, and honestly, a garden that almost looks after itself. If you want healthier soil without needing constant inputs, start with your walkways. Cover them, feed them a little, and let worms do what they've been doing for millions of years. If this guide helped you rethink your garden paths, do subscribe to Evergreen Garden for more no-nonsense, proven gardening strategies. Share this with another serious grower, and leave a comment telling me what you're covering your walkways with this season.